campus, how and under what circumstances, and who had access to the equipment, who had access to poetry tapes, etc. And in the course of that search, I discovered that while the university maintains a great number of historical records, it doesn't seem to have quite as much information about its own history of media use. And I explored a range of different avenues to try to catch a glimpse of this sound recording equipment that might have been used at Sire George at the time, and was excited to come across this series of 16 millimeter films in Concordia's visual media database called TV Lectures. That was the name of the series in the database. And one of them was called the Humanities. And I thought, oh, this episode might show some of the campus language laboratories, so I was very excited. And especially since new equipment had been installed in the year in which the visual media database said that the series had been produced, which was 1967. So this is, a year after the hall building opened, which is where all the poetry readings took place. And later I discovered that this series of TV programs was actually produced in 1961, so that was a bit of a misdirect, but it wasn't important. But the language lab was interesting because that's where the tape recorder and the tapes had been stored and where the poetry tapes had been edited and dubbed, etc. But the film didn't show the language laboratories, as you'll see, but I was intrigued to see featured in that program some of the professors that I had been reading about. So you'll see Neil Compton and Sidney Lamb, who were chairs of the English department at the time of the poetry series. And I watched a few more of the TV lectures out of curiosity and was struck by the fact that they called attention to so many of the same questions that we here discussed today, questions about the shape and the shape and purpose of humanities education, about the role of the university, about reading and time pressures and information overload, the balance between teaching and research, between job training and social critique, and questions about administration too. And you'll hear, whether the university should be run by faculty or quote-unquote businessmen. I found an article at the Concordia archives from the campus newspaper, The Georgian, that claims that the program would, quote, present the first English language experiment in televised education at the university level. And so, as Charles had mentioned, what's even more interesting is that these questions were being raised in this context of experimentation with TV as a new distribution channel for higher ed. And in fact, the program produced by CBC with the cooperation of Sire George and overseen by someone named Bill Rice, who was a former student at Sire George and who also had worked on educational TV for the US Army. The program was intended as a kind of trial run in two senses. So first, it let the university get a feel for being on TV, and it let the broader public get a feel for what was happening on the university campus. And the stated aim of the series was, again from the article, to, quote, depict the university as an academic and community institution in 7 half-hour documentaries. I found another document in Concordia archives. It was a memo from Dean Ray. Oh, I should say that, in the image here we have, this is on the left, Henry Hall, who was principal of Sire George at the time. In the center it's Dean Dean Robert Ray. And on the right, this is Kenneth Davey, who is program director for CBMT, CBC's Montreal station. So a memo of congratulation from Dean Ray upon completion of the series states, quote, I hope that we can now go on to use other uses of this medium, I hope that we can now go on to other uses of this medium, which I'm sure has an important contribution to make to our educational goals. And indeed, Sire George did go on to offer courses via television for the next 3 years for non-credit viewers who could mail in and receive different course materials for a nominal sum, and on a 4-credit basis as well. And so a course on Shakespeare was offered starting in September 1962, and a course in economics was featured the following year, and Introduction to English Literature was the last of Sire George Williams' television courses, and that was offered in 1964-65. So this experiment in university by television, obviously has a lot in common with today's ventures into online course delivery. And so for many reasons already mentioned, it's a really nice time to gather as a community and to observe and reflect upon this artifact in which the university both contemplates itself and explores its self-presentation in new media. And this event also represents this welcome point of contact for the study of institutional media archives and media use that's currently underway at Concordia. And so I'm looking forward to hearing from you during the panel discussion. So the first episode is the Humanities, which was the second episode of the series. And after that, we'll go immediately to the second episode, which is called Role of the University. And that was the seventh and final episode of the series. So, bon film.